You know, we've had a pretty good run of new hardware for the GameCube from like the modding scene over the last several years. The ability to do HDMI out through that digital port, able to load games from an SD card, even to the point now where you can use a Raspberry Pi Pico to just boot up the system how you want. That includes into Swiss without the need for any of that. Well, now there is a new piece of hardware that's found its way onto the scene, and I'm pretty happy to check it out here today for the first time because honestly, this could be one of the most game-changing pieces of hardware for the system, especially when it comes to the controller side of things. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button, helps out a ton. And if you're new to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. So the piece of hardware I'm talking about today is from LaserBear. LaserBear does a lot of like the 3D printed mounts for things like the SD card here, and it just makes it look way better, way more convenient. And I've been ordering them for quite a while now to finish up any of these different products. But they asked if I wanted to take a look at this, as they do have pre-orders live on their site now for this product, which I will link down below in the description if you wanted to learn more about this. However, what we are seeing right now is a replacement board for the controller board in the GameCube. You can obviously see the ports here where all the different controllers will plug in, but what makes this so interesting is it will add Bluetooth functionality to the GameCube. That's right, you'll be able to sync up any of those Bluetooth controllers you may already be using, like the PlayStation 5 controller, one of those 8-bit DOs, even to the point where apparently you can use a Bluetooth keyboard to essentially simulate that GameCube keyboard controller that people were typing on in Phantasy Star. So we're gonna attempt to install this, see how difficult it is to do, and then try it out. So while I'm taking this apart, let's talk about some of the positives when it comes to this hardware. One, you won't actually need to solder anything. That was a big point that they made, where it is like a plug and play option. Essentially, you still have to open the system up and replace the front controller board, but you don't have to solder anything in. It's mostly just screwing it in, finding a good spot for the antenna, and then just running a couple of cables when it comes to the power and fan, which is great because it makes it way easier to recommend this to people, since a lot of times I'll do these projects and people are like, that's really cool, but you just soldered that 28-pin ribbon cable down to the board with that chip. Probably not something I'm going to attempt. This would certainly be more along the line of beginner level. All right, so the lid comes off here. There is our LaserBear mount with the SD card in it. Gonna remove that. Now, we will have to run the fan and power cable to this board, as it will actually be controlling all of that along with the Bluetooth connections. So we'll have to remove a few things over here. But for the most part, you can get to the front board immediately. In fact, after you remove those 4 screws, this just pops right out. And this is the main spot we'll be working in when it comes to installing our board. And I'm not kidding when I say I have not done this at all yet. I actually have the install guide up here over on a separate monitor, just kind of going through everything. So it should be a lot of fun to test out the different features when I have it installed. All right, so we had a few screws there, and this just kind of lifts out. You can see the similarities in terms of the shape and everything. I do like, by the way, that they have this battery holder. You can see it's one that you don't have to desolder. This just kind of pops out and put a new one in, just in case the battery dies, although these do last quite a while. So I assume the new battery that they're sending here will be good for quite some time. We do have our Bluetooth antenna here. They say with the instructions to just put it somewhere above like the 2 middle controller ports. You can see there's a nice spot right there, and it looks like that's about where they placed it, with the antenna kind of coming out the top here. Although we could sort of feed this around. It's pretty small and fairly flexible, so I think I'm just gonna drop it right here like they have it, and then just feed it around. I think that looks pretty good. I'll play around with this as I have to when I install this guy, but for the most part, the antenna is just gonna wrap around this board and plug in right there. The guides are pretty easy too. They have some posts here where the screws will go in, and they have some plastic inserts here, so you basically just line them up and it'll just slide right on like that. Just have a couple of screws to drop in, and that's about it for the front. Okay, I think that looks good. I have the Bluetooth cable running around here for the antenna. I can probably tuck this in somewhere. I'll find a spot for it as we close this up. Otherwise though, I just need to plug this cable into the board down here, and the plastics go back in on the sides, just like that. We can see it's nice and lined up right there. You still have this ribbon cable kind of sticking up, but I can fold it down and sort of help it back under. Now it says I need to unplug the main power lead from our power switch right here. And this guy, which is from the front board, has to then plug in back here. We can see I have the main power now running up through here. I can kind of, I think, tuck this down and around. It is sort of a tight fit right here, but it can, for the most part, sit on the side. And then I just need to have the fan plug in right there. And that's pretty much it. We're installed. We had to just reroute some cables here, but otherwise, it was pretty easy. There is a lot of room in here, I will say, because I have this, the SD card loader in, but you should still have enough room, even if you just have the regular optical drive in here, to install this. It's not too bad, and the GameCube itself just has a lot of open area inside, so it makes kind of routing and hiding cables pretty easy. But now, let's try it out. All right, let's see what happens when we power it on. I'm gonna go ahead and try to play off of the Elgato recording here on OBS. We'll see how that goes. But we powered on. Oh, I like the look of the front LED right now. It's RGB, it looks like, but it's going between like a red to a purple to an orange, kind of flashing through the colors. It's the GameCube's up now on the screen, and oh, the ports actually have some LED lights inside too. Interesting. Let me pull up the user guide and we'll see how we get this purple PS5 controller synced up. Looking at the user guide, the light here where it's going from like a purple fading to then a red means that it's in pairing mode, and it does that automatically when it's turned on. Have the PS5 controller here, which I will put into pairing mode. You just hold the create and the PlayStation button at the same time while you're turning it on. It should go to where it's like flash. There we go. So it's like flashing this blue. Oh, look, it already synced up to the, oh, that's cool. It's like this reddish orange light now. And let's see. Oh, wow. All right. So it is synced up. This does feel weird. I'm trying to think of what the buttons, I guess that would be A. Yeah, that is A. All right, cool. Wow, this is strange stuff right now. Uncharted territories, playing a GameCube with a PS5 controller. Let's go into a game real quick though. This being Need for Speed Underground 2, we'll use the triggers obviously to, there we go, to drive around and accelerate and brake. So we'll see how that works out. Now it seems to be working just fine. The back triggers are solid, responsive. They did mention that there is an entire like web interface where you can do a whole bunch of things, which also includes remapping the buttons. So I could kind of play around with the front-facing buttons here with square and triangle and all this to try to match it up to where it makes more sense in my mind, although I guess I would eventually get used to it. I'm just trying to envision the GameCube controller right now and overlay it onto the PlayStation 5 controller, and I think I would have a few things to change up. But if you look at like their list of supported controllers, there's quite a few, and it gets even better. The firmware on this board is something they can upgrade over time, so I'm sure they can add support and functionality to this because, interestingly enough, there are macros built into this board that would allow you to do things like reset the game from your controller. So it says that there is a macro for just doing like a soft reset of the system, which would be, in this case, L2, R2, start, and then square, just like that. Yeah, okay, so it did a full reset of the game. Yeah, so it goes all the way back to the beginning of the game that I loaded up here, which is nice because there are times where I'd want to reset the game, but pressing reset here is also built into the board, which allows them to do this kind of stuff because it can control that reset button, which means everything can be wireless for you, so you don't have to get up and go to your GameCube to do that, press a button. It's already mapped out, which is the biggest thing about this modification that I really like. Basically, we're just going through all of these pieces of hardware and upgrades to modernize the actual hardware of the GameCube. I mean, think about it. We have HDMI, the ability to load off of SD cards, and now the ability to sync up 4 PlayStation 5 or controllers of your choosing that are all wireless and not have to rely on the limited number of Wavebird controllers. It's an awesome controller, I know. But I also know that they're not exactly plentiful. They're not all over the place, and those that are, I mean, it's a roll of the dice on eBay if you're getting one that's in good or even functional shape. I'm also curious if I just power this on, if I can then just pick up my PS5 controller, press the center PlayStation button, and it'll sync up, so I don't have to go through the whole pairing process that I just had to start. So it's at Swiss now. This is started up. It's in kind of that pairing mode where it's just looking for a Bluetooth controller, as it should be. So if I just press this right now to turn on the controller, look at that. It's synced up like, yeah, immediately. Now, their full list of controller support right now is the PlayStation 3, 4, or 5, Xbox One, Series X and S, which you would want to look for the Xbox controller that has the Bluetooth connection, because they had one that was on like Wi-Fi Direct early on, and then eventually they released the Bluetooth controller. There's also Switch controllers, 8-bit DO. You would want to use the X input mode for that. Wii controller, so I guess you could sync up a Wii remote to it. I do have a Wii remote. All right, let's try this. I have the Wii remote here. It says I have to hold for 7 to 9 seconds to enable pairing mode. Oh, look at that. The Wii remote synced up. Let's see. Oh, it actually works. I have no idea what I would play with the Wii remote on the GameCube, but the fact that it actually functions and I'm using a Wii remote on the GameCube is just ridiculous. So check it out. I have the Wii remote right here, and then I also have the PS5 controller synced up to the GameCube. And the really cool thing about this is because you're just syncing stuff up wirelessly, the front ports are both lit up, the two that are being used. So if I sync up another controller, the third port will light up, and then we'll have the fourth port light up. So it at least has an indication as to how many people are synced up to it. I'm gonna get a little weird with this though. I'm going to take the Wavebird plug-in here. It's gonna go right into port 3. This will turn on. And I just wanna see if it'll still function by having a Wii remote, a PS5 controller, and now this guy synced up. And it does. I mean, you can see it blinking there. This would be then third player. So I mean, it's pretty impressive. What I'm gonna do is, let me go into, sorry, this is first player. Let me go into a game that does multiplayer, which we'll just go into Super Mario Strikers real quick. And what I'll do is, we'll go to the multiplayer section and see if all three of these can be on the same team. I'm at the team select screen here, just kind of playing around with these controllers, but yeah, you have the Wii remote, the PS5, the Wavebird. They all function fine. It looks like just kind of going between these two areas. Yeah, it looks like everything just is working fine together. I mean, I got to keep switching between the different controllers, and well, it looks like that was the D-pad. Okay, so the Wii remote, that's just the, that doesn't work obviously because this is just the D-pad that's functioning there. Now there was one other feature I wanted to take a look at here, and that involves remote shutdown and startup, as in you can just turn the system off with your controller and then come back later and turn it on, much like you would with current systems now, where you don't have to get up and necessarily press a button on the console itself. So in that case, it would be L2, R2, be start, and then face button like that, so cross or X, and you let go. Oh, look at that. So it shut it down. That's kind of a weird setup, by the way. I should be able to play around with that in the settings for changing up the buttons and all of this, the configuration. But it is now off. So I should just be able to turn it on by pressing the PlayStation button. Oh, look at that. All right, that is really cool. And that's one of the big reasons why they have the power going through this board, so that they can control the power itself and do things like these macro buttons and make the GameCube feel more modern. That's the biggest push here, and that's one of the reasons I'm really excited to see something like this happen. Now, you don't necessarily have to track down a Wavebird controller, but they go a bit further than that. You get a cool looking LED on the top where it's an indicator for syncing controllers, and you have the LED lights on the front in order to tell you how many are synced up. But the fact that you can more or less start to just pick out and choose what controllers you want to use with the GameCube is massive. And again, it makes it more modern where you have all these different wireless controllers that you can pick from. Nintendo's controllers, Sony's controllers, Microsoft's, or even just third-party ones like 8-bit DO that have some really good D-pads. I think what I'm gonna do is play around with this mod a bit more. This is the GameCube that I use primarily anyway, but I wanna try out different controllers. I wanna spend some time with using a keyboard with it apparently. And the ASIC keyboard is pretty expensive, and I feel like it's only used for Phantasy Star. Let me know if there's another game that it was really used for, because that'd be pretty fun to check that out and see what the functionality is there. It's still early on for this piece of hardware. They're doing pre-orders. It's not cheap. I'm not gonna sit here and tell you it's like inexpensive, but I will say with the functionality involved here, if you are someone who plays GameCube, like the actual hardware, quite a bit, and you don't have 4 like Wavebird controllers, this would be pretty good to get since the compatibility is so high. You most likely already have a bunch of wireless controllers that would work with this now. And I will admit it is interesting to be able to use a PS5 or an Xbox or even a Wii remote for whatever reason with the system. Upgradable firmware, I think that's great. So we'll see, I'm sure, more improvements and even features added since it can control like the entirety of the power cycle for this system. So remote start, I think, is just like really the scratching the surface for what they could do with this entire setup. So this is exciting stuff to see what's happening with the GameCube right now in the modding scene. And hey, if you're someone who is thinking about adding LED lights to your controller ports on your GameCube, technically it's already done here, and it has like an RGB light that comes with it for the power. But let me know what you guys think about this one down below, this new Bluetooth board for the GameCube from LaserBear. I'll leave a link down below so you can learn more about it, along with the pre-order status and everything there. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.